Hi, I'm Nejat Doğan from the Department of International Relations at Anadolu University, and today's topic is international organizations. Let me give you the chapter outline first of all. In this chapter, we will be theorizing about international organizations, and secondly, United Nations, and then European Union, and we'll touch on regional intergovernmental organizations and international non-governmental organizations, and finally, the non-state actors. And as you know, this is all about global governance. How can we govern international politics? And international organizations is a good means to manage international relations at the systemic level. We have two main types of international organizations. First of all, governmental, or generally we say intergovernmental organizations, and secondly, non-governmental organizations. Let's look at the main approaches, theoretical approaches to international organizations. Your book covers such approaches as functionalism, neo-functionalism, security community, epistemic community, and the regime theory. Let me give you a one-sentence explanation of each. Functionalism, in fact, has been put forward by David Mitrani during the Second World War, and he argued that, in fact, forms follow function. What this means is that the states should not be concerned about, for example, like security and defense issues, which are very sensitive issues for their sovereignty. So if states start with issues such as economics, maybe they can move on to other relations, especially at the security and defense levels. Neo-functionalism, in fact, is the application of this idea at the regional level. If you look at Ernst B. Haas's works, he develops neo-functionalism in late 1950s and early 60s. In fact, this is the period, this is the time that European communities have been established and trying to become maybe even a supranational organization. What Haas said is maybe starting with economics, these European nations can move to other issue areas such as security and maybe even defense and political integration. And this idea is called the spillover theory. In one issue area, the cooperations, if started, can spill over to other areas such as political issues and defense and security issues. Karl Deutsch, in fact, developed the security community idea. He had NATO in his mind when he's working on the security community idea. The thing is that if the member nations have some kind of shared political values, this will help them to establish a closer community among themselves. If we look at epistemic community idea here, maybe we can call this knowledge-based societies. In one issue area, if the experts come together and if they have shared values in this issue area, they can improve international relations in that issue area. In fact, Peter Haas and others applied this theory, for example, to the Mediterranean. Regime theory, in fact, it is developed again in the early 1980s with such international relations scholars as Krasner and Keohane. What they said is that in fact, states can come together and agree on cooperation in one issue area, and they can manage their relations within this issue area. And the regime is defined such as its rules, principles, and procedures around which actors' expectations converge in a given area of international relations. And at the systemic level, we see some regimes as, for example, financial regime, global petroleum or oil regime, and we can see an economic regime, All these are regimes. Even maybe international law is kind of a regime. Let me give you some background information about United Nations. Maybe you know this from your history classes. As you know, the League of Nations was formed in 1919, and Article 10 of the League Covenant was about the collective security. However, the League system collapsed because of some aggression and aggressor states in the system, such as Japan, Germany, and Italy. However, the Second World War, the war between 1939 and 1945, in fact, there was a cooperation among Western powers, especially after the war, to revive the idea of an international organization. And at the San Francisco conference, they were able to set up a new international organization, which is the United Nations. And if you look at the UN Charter, we can see the purposes of the organization there, and we can single out four main purposes of the organization. First, to maintain peace and security. Secondly, develop friendly relations among states. Third, achieve international cooperation among member states. And fourth, to be a center for harmonizing states' actions to achieve these first three objectives. And your book covers the main organs of the United Nations, and I can touch on these. The first one is the Security Council, and as you know, there are 5 permanent members in the Security Council with veto power. These states are United States, China, Russia, Britain, and France. The General Assembly, however, covers all member states, and each member state is represented at the General Assembly with 1 vote. However, as you know, General Assembly resolutions are not binding, whereas Security Council can take binding decisions. Third is the Economic and Social Council, which deals with economic and social issues. The fourth one is the Trusteeship Council. This council was managing the trustees of the United Nations, especially after the Second World War. However, today it's a defunct organization, defunct council. It still exists. However, it doesn't hold any meetings these days. And the fifth is the International Court of Justice, which is also known as the World Court. And the seat of the court is, as you know, is in The Hague, La Haye, in the Netherlands. And finally, we see the Secretariat. As you know, there is one Secretary General and his office, and Secretary General is chosen by the Security Council and the General Assembly for a 5-year term. And it's another international intergovernmental organization at the regional level. However, this time is the European Union. As you know, European Union started with the European Coal and Steel Community in 1952, and then the European nations moved on to establish the European Economic Community and European Atomic Energy Agency in 1957 with the Treaty of Rome. With the Maastricht Treaty signed in 1992, they changed the name to European Union, as you know, and the EU was adopted. So with this Maastricht Treaty in 1992, and as you know, European Union in fact was successful in establishing a single market where the persons and then the goods and services, as well as the capital, moved freely among these nations. These were so far the international governmental organizations we talk about, such as at the global level, United Nations, and at the local level, at the European level, the European Union. Secondly, as you know, there are some major intergovernmental organizations in the system, and your book covers these organizations, and I would suggest you go and read the details of these intergovernmental organizations. The book covers such as organizations as African Union, Association of the Southeast Asian Nations, which is ASEAN, Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf, and the Organization of American States, OAS. And third of all, we can talk about international non-governmental organizations. And these organizations, in fact, they deal with specific issues such as helping the people on the field in wars, or those are the relief organizations, and some of the organizations help refugees. Why this is international non-governmental organizations? Because the governments do not take active part in the establishment and in the management of these organizations. However, governments, of course, may support the activities, the functions of these organizations, such as the International Red Cross, Red Crescent, and the Red Crystal Committee have been, as you know, supported by governments, in fact, almost in all states at the systemic level today. And secondly, we see the Islamic Relief Organization and Doctors Without Borders. Médecins Sans Frontières, it was established by the French doctors, first of all, so that organization is generally known as Médecins Sans Frontières. And finally, the book covers non-state actor organizations. In fact, these are the international non-governmental organizations. However, we don't see that states support these organizations generally, and these are basically non-state and the civil society organizations. We can talk about such examples as Oxfam, the Greenpeace, and the Amnesty International. And this wraps up our video today, and thank you for joining me, and I hope you join me in the next video on international global political economy. By then, you take care. Bye.